Week 2 brought about some surprises and some things we kind of expected might start costing people their job here in a second. We'll talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You got that right. Welcome to the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that know your favorites like no one else. I'm your host, Tony, the Barber Wiggins, joined by Locked On NFL expert Julian Council. And on today's episode, here's the things that we're going to discuss. Commanders possibly pushing Brian Daboll closer to being fired. That's in segment 3. Segment 2, we're going to start it off with the Ravens losing in a quote-unquote disgusting manner. We'll hit that right in the middle. But we're going to start first with KC barbecuing Cincy in an ugly win all over again. Prior to doing that, I got to let you know that we appreciate you making us your first listen of the day and for being an everyday here on Locked On NFL, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to tune in again to Locked On NFL in the morning for the madman, Tyler Rowland, for more NFL coverage. Today's episode, of course, is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code, all lower cases, Locked On NFL, to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Julian Council, you ready to start some rumors and start some barbershop stuff and talk about people business, man?
Yeah, let's get into it, man. Week 2 of the NFL. Let's go.
Hey, we ain't even got to wait because we're going to hit it right away. We saw the Chiefs. I said they barbecued. I got a little cute there. They barbecued Cincinnati. Let me tell you what happened. Cincinnati reminded me of, I still root for Florida State. But back in like the 80s, maybe in the early 90s, Bobby Bowden always had these teams that we thought were better than anybody else. They just couldn't beat Miami. I mean, they would outplay them and then miss a field goal. They could not beat Miami. And guess what? I know that look on the Bengals' face. It was absolute disgust yesterday, my brother, when they lost that game. Could you believe what you saw?
No, and honestly, God, I mean, for Florida State, like wide left, wide right, but they've actually had success, though, at Arrowhead, man. They started calling it Burrowhead Stadium when they went in there, won an AFC championship game a couple years ago to the Super Bowl. They won then again the next year in the regular season, and I felt like they should have won that game yesterday, too, where you look at it, Burrow has that fumble that's taken back for a touchdown, and without that and the pass interference, which you hate to see that call in that situation, but the dude ran right through the back of him, and you got to throw the flag there. And I know how people feel about the Chiefs, same way they felt about the Patriots. It's always going to be against the Chiefs and the refs. I can't really blame the refs on that one. You got Jamar Chase out here losing his head, getting up into the ref. He throws a penalty that takes him back a little bit. They still get the field goal, but it takes them away from an opportunity where they could potentially have gone for it on 4th down, try to go and be more aggressive. So that's a tough loss for Cincinnati, a team that is 0-2 again. I just understand how with Joe Burrow, with T. Higgins, with Jamar Chase, that defense, Trey Hendrickson was great yesterday, how they continuously fall into an 0-2 hole year after year. That's a tough loss for them, man.
It is a tough loss, man. And sometimes when you're a team like the Chiefs and you know you got somebody's number, all you got to do is just keep playing. They're going to do something stupid in just a second. Just keep going. They don't believe they can beat us. Just keep going. Listen to what the Chiefs had to say. If you listen to Locked On Chiefs, you'd have thought they lost the game because they're just used to winning. But listen to this from Locked On Chiefs.
A second victory to start 2024. It was ugly, but it got enough points mostly. We'll see. It struggled. Why and how can they correct that? But bottom line, and we start here tonight, Matt, end of the day, as fun as this is to watch teams melt down, you tried to give this game away all day long and were unsuccessful. You got an ugly W. At the end of the day, other than injuries, that should be, I think, something you take away and feel pretty good about.
Regardless of Mahomes having one of his worst games that he's had in a very long time, they were still in a position for him to win at the end of the game. And there's not a QB in the NFL that I would have rather had running the offense. And there's not a kicker in the NFL that I would rather have kicking that ball from 51 than Butker. Kansas City has two of the best at those two positions, and it paid dividends for him today.
Now, if you pay attention and listen, it doesn't sound like they won the game, even though they're 2-0, and that's because it came with a bit of a price. We found out right before we recorded that Isaiah Pacheco has a broken fibula, and he's going on IR. Could be 4 weeks, could be a little bit longer. It's going to get harder and harder for them to win these ugly games with the way they came out of that game yesterday, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah, that hurts to lose Pacheco. I mean, he's going to go on IR. Hollywood Brown's already on IR. They haven't seen him yet this season. But it's not like Mahomes didn't have worse last year when he had to carry those guys all the way to another Super Bowl championship. So he's still got Rashee Rice. They got the rookie out of Texas, Xavier Worthy, who flashed in week 1. They still got Travis Kelce. And, of course, as fans are going to say, they have the refs on their side, even though I'm not really in that camp. They'll be okay. I will say this, though. I really didn't like at the end of that game how they played for the 51-yard field goal. I understand that Butker is one of the best kickers in the league, but it's still 51 yards. He banged it. I was sitting here just being like, all right, Andy, you missed this kick, man. I don't really understand why y'all aren't trying to get closer, but you do have Harrison Butker. So that was one thing. I'm nitpicky. I didn't really like it. And I think the Locked On Chiefs folks also understand, like last week, they could have lost that game to Baltimore. Very close to likely foot being in there. And I think John Harbaugh goes for 2 and tries to win that game. And then that's a game I feel like Cincinnati should have won yesterday without the mistakes.
Yeah, so they're not the only people in the league that lost the game that, they won a game that they thought they should have lost. Cincinnati lost the game that they thought they should have won. The Dallas Cowboys lost the game that everybody on earth, including me, thought they were going to lose. And they lost in convincing fashion. Sometimes I want to talk about the Saints, but sometimes you got to talk to the people that the Saints did something to. So I want to listen to Locked On Cowboys.
The Dallas Cowboys get absolutely destroyed at home by the New Orleans Saints. Hi, I'm Landon McCool, the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and the Dallas Cowboys defense was unable to make any kind of stops at all until the middle of the fourth quarter as they allowed touchdowns on the first, I'm pretty sure it was 7 drives of this game before getting an interception that tipped off of a Saints player and then forcing a punt on the second drive. But the Cowboys, having been more than 3 touchdowns down for almost the entirety of the game, finally showed a little bit of life on defense in the fourth quarter, only to give the ball right back to the Saints with an interception by Dak Prescott. Just a terrible game, top to bottom, especially by the defense, and a really, really, really bad showing for the first time, really kind of playing a Shanahan offense. Back to the drawing board in a lot of different ways. For more on this, make sure you check us out on the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and we'll break this all down this week.
Yeah, we're going to break it down right now. We know about misery, Julian Council, because we're both 0-2, but it's one thing to expect to be really, really good and then get your head bashed in at home, and there's nothing you can say about it other than Alvin Kamara just scored again.
Yeah, that's the second straight home game for Dallas where they've watched the quarterback just dice them up. Derek Carr at the end of the first half had a perfect passer rating. Jordan Love in that playoff game in the wild card round nearly had a perfect passer rating. So this is a defensive carryover from last year to this year. And Dan Quinn, he's no longer here to oversee it. Even though they had issues that time last year, he's now up in Washington with the Commanders as their head coach. One of the week 1 overreactions probably was that the Saints offense is cooking now, Clint Kubiak. Well, it looks like they are legit after what they did to Carolina week 1. In Carolina, they have their own problems, but Dallas has problems too. But that's impressive, man, to see them hit Rashid Shaheed for the second week in a row for a 70-plus yard touchdown. Alvin Kamara looking like his vintage old self, because we really haven't seen, I feel like, that kind of Alvin Kamara performance in a couple of years. This offense is good, man, and I did not expect that New Orleans is going to be a team that you had to look at in the NFC South as a true contender. So through two weeks, they may have the best offense in the NFL, but they may be the team to beat in the NFC South.
Quick thing about the NFC South before we get to segment 2. The Bucs also went to Detroit and won. So that's 2. I thought the NFC South was the weakest division in the league, but now you see 2 teams that's in the top 5 of the power rankings get beat. And if you'd have told me that Amon-Ra St. Brown would have 100 yards receiving, and then if you'd have told me that Aiden Hutchinson would have 5 sacks, I would have told you that Detroit won, but they didn't. So now we might be looking at the Bucs as well as the Saints as something to keep an eye on here as we move forward with the AFC South. We got a lot to discuss, a lot more to discuss. The Baltimore Ravens are 0-2. Tough game the first week. And it looked like they had a little bit of a hangover because they didn't get out of their own way yesterday. And my man, Kevin Oestreicher, used a word that I haven't heard attached to the Baltimore Ravens in quite some time. We'll get to that and more here on the Monday edition of Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Prize Picks. That's right, man. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. But check this out. It's just you against the house, the computer. It's not you against the other 4,999,000 people. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Want to play Prize Picks alongside Drewski, Joe Button, MMA champ Sugar Shane O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Here's what you got to do. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's Locked On NFL on Prize Picks to get $50 when you play $5. You don't even need to win, man. All you got to do is do exactly what I said. Collect that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. And today's show is also sponsored by DoorDash. There's only one place that I trust, and that is delivery with DoorDash. And I'm talking about every single time food comes hot, food comes on time, very professional. And it's not just chain stores. It's your little mom and pop stores, the little pizza place on the corner. DoorDash will take care of you, man. I am telling you, they will absolutely take care of you. DoorDash, your door to more. Download the DoorDash app now to order your game day favorites. Use the promo code LOCKEDFALL24 for 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. Limited time offer, terms apply. Promo is not valid for orders containing alcohol. And you must be 21 or older to order alcohol. Drink responsibly. Alcohol available only in select markets. You're in the barbershop, baby, here on Locked On NFL, the second edition of Locked On NFL every single day. You can find Tyler Rowland, the madman, early in the morning with a double shot of espresso. Slide right in here to the barbershop where we get all up in people's business and start spreading rumors about people getting fired. That's right. And we're going to keep doing a little bit more of that today here on Locked On NFL with my man Julian Council, the expert on Locked On NFL. Now, listen, ain't nobody going to fire John Harbaugh.
No.
None. At all. Ain't nobody going to try to get rid of Lamar Jackson. But I will tell you, after that hangover, after that shocking loss, not really a shocking loss, but the way that they lost to the Chiefs on opening night, we all had the Raiders coming in there getting their heads bashed in. Antonio Pierce and the Raiders had something a little bit different. And my man, Kevin Oestreicher, you can tell the despair in his voice because they got some serious, serious problems. Listen to this.
The Baltimore Ravens suffer a disgusting loss to the Las Vegas Raiders in week 2, 26-23. I'm Kevin Oestreicher, the host of Locked On Ravens. Indefensible all the way around. The Ravens fall to 0-2 for the first time since 2015 and are tied for last in the AFC North. A lot of reasons Baltimore dropped this game. Inexplicable penalties, bad execution, but the most glaring thing is the game management by head coach John Harbaugh, who used his 2 challenges on very easily not overturnable plays. For Baltimore, that second half timeout cost to be a very costly one to not have as the Raiders walked the Ravens down in order to take the lead on a field goal. Baltimore has a lot of work to do. The offensive line did not perform well. Other guys not stepping up into the moment, and the Ravens now have to travel to Dallas for a Week 3 matchup with the Cowboys. For more on the Ravens and their Week 2 loss, be sure to check out the Locked On Ravens podcast and subscribe on YouTube, part of Locked On Podcast Network.
Julian Council, when you hear the word disgusting, that means it was pretty bad.
Yeah, they held the Raiders to 1.6 yards per carry. Anytime you do that in the NFL, you expect to win, especially when the opposing quarterback is Gardner Minshew. And I think Minshew's done a pretty solid job considering expectations everywhere he's been, especially last year in Indianapolis. But coming off of that loss, a heartbreaker against Kansas City, where I'm thinking Ravens are thinking to themselves, all right, we can play with this team. Last year in that AFC title game, we didn't put out our best foot, but we came out this season. We showed we're not worried about Kansas City. We're going to be a tough team. And now they're an 0-2 hole. And they always put out the stats that since the playoffs expanded to 14 teams in 2020, 32 franchises have started the season 0-2, and only 2 of them have made the playoffs. Cincinnati, in 2022, and in the last year, the Houston Texans. So that's not a good spot to be in, at least with the division. Cincinnati's also 0-2. Cleveland's 1-1. Not like they look that great not winning against the Jags on Sunday. And then Pittsburgh's 2-0 with Justin Fields as their starting quarterback. We know they're going to win at least 9 games because Mike Tomlin, he's not going to have a losing season. We know that. But the window's still open there for Baltimore to be able to turn things around. But it's a must-win already early in this season next Sunday against Dallas.
I did not expect to start this season out seeing both Baltimore and Cincinnati 0-2. You know, it's like having too much fun on the weekend and you got to go to the clinic, right? And you walk in and you see your rival sitting over there and you're ashamed that you're there, but then you see him and you're like, oh, I see you had some fun too, right? So both of them are sitting there looking funny with an IV in their arm right now. And the surprising thing with me about Baltimore is everyone always thought that it was just this magical thing where if you get Lamar Jackson and woo, you put Derrick Henry, the Hall of Famer, Mr. 2000, they're going to be this dynamic duo. And we forgot you need an offensive line to block, right? Yeah. And the thing about running the ball, you have to be able to run when you want to and when you have to. And yesterday, the Packers actually needed to run against the Colts because Jordan Love was out and they were depending on Malik Willis. Guess what? Ain't no problem. Listen to Peter Bukowski.
The Green Bay Packers were underdogs at home against the Indianapolis Colts. They took it personally. The Green Bay Packers on the ground absolutely bullied the Indianapolis Colts. 261 yards on the ground on 53 attempts. A 16-10 game that was not even as close as the final score indicated. A missed field goal in this one, a fumble going into the end zone from Josh Jacobs in this one. The Packers, look, shaking off some early season rust, no doubt about it. They could have scored more against Philly. They could have scored more against Indianapolis. In this case, you're just going to take it and you're going to run. I loved the way that this offense moved, looked, played, acted early on.
Hey, man, look, they figured it out. Figure it out. That's been my favorite 3 words. I got 5 kids, right? You know how many times I said figure it out? They absolutely figured it out, and they did exactly what they had to do to win the game.
Yeah, I mean, credit to them because I was concerned when Jordan Love went down in Brazil and wondered if Malik Willis was someone they can win with because we have seen him in the past when he was in Tennessee and he was not playable at all. But for him to even go 12 for 14 yesterday, to have a solid day, to be able to take the pressure off of him and in an NFL game, have a team run 53 times on you for 261 yards. That's embarrassing from Indianapolis. They have some concerns there defensively, and that's another team that's an 0-2 hole. And it looks like the AFC South's basically already decided with Houston 2-0. That's a good win for Green Bay. And they got Tennessee on the road next week, a Malik Willis revenge game, if you want to call it that. They were definitely justified in getting rid of him, but that's going to be a chance for them to go down there and win that game, maybe 2-1 before they got to face off against a Vikings team that currently is undefeated. And we don't know how long Jordan Love's going to be out. But being able to run the football, and people forget, we always focus on the quarterback, on receivers and corners, all that. It's a line of scrimmage game. And when you can bully a team and be able to run it like that, you can win a lot of games in this league, especially when you have a quarterback who you want to take some pressure off of. So kudos, Matt LaFleur, that offensive line and that Packers run attack by being able to take pressure off their young quarterback.
Man, I would have thought Lou Holtz or Coach Osborne from Nebraska was over there on the sideline yesterday. Isn't it funny, though? You made a good point. You can actually learn something about yourself by accident, right? So now when Jordan Love comes back, they ain't got to throw the ball 38, 45 times a game. They know that they have another switch. They can hit that clutch and they can do something else. And I think that's going to bode well for them down the stretch. Some teams that have some serious problems right now. One of them is the New York Giants. We talked a week ago about Brian Daboll maybe getting fired. I thought that he would buy him a little time this weekend. I got something else to tell you here in segment number 3 in just a second on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Game Time. That's right. Ain't no time for procrastination, man, but it is time left for you to get tickets even when you're late. Now, let me explain. Game Time specializes in last-minute ticket purchases to any event you want, whether it's a game, a play, monster trucks, whatever it is, man, you can get tickets at Game Time. And ain't nobody going to be mad at you for being late because Game Time absolutely specializes in that. All you got to do is take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms apply. Again, I'm going to tell you how to do this. Create an account and redeem code. I'm going to spell it for you. LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Man, what time is it? It is game time. All right, third segment here on Locked On NFL, man. It's fast and furious. All of these games going on. So much drama at 1 o'clock yesterday. Julian, I don't like to pick on people, but sometimes you can just tell when it's time. You remember Living Color when Benito Betrell would look out the window and go, I got something to tell you, but you ain't heard it from me. I got something to tell you, and you can tell everybody you heard this from me. Brian Daboll coaches in New York. He's been there for 3 years. They've purged the roster. They've changed defensive coordinators. Washington has a rookie quarterback and an all-new regime. Some of them don't even have experience in football, and they beat the Giants yesterday. I know the New York media, and I know how that works. I'm just wondering if Brian Daboll is going to last any longer than the next few weeks if they don't win a game here pretty soon.
Yeah, looking at the odds last week, he was plus 300 to be the first head coach fired in the NFL. And I'm guessing that number has gotten even bigger as far as how soon it's going to be likely for him to be fired from that job. And that's a tough loss, man. To go out there and to score 3 touchdowns. They didn't have a kicker, which it's unfortunate that happened, but to not have a kicker in that situation with Gano hurting his hamstring and warmups, and to go out there to hold Washington to no touchdowns and then to lose that game, that's the first time in NFL history that team scored 3+ touchdowns, allowed no touchdowns, and lost in regulation. When you're making the wrong kind of history after what happened last week with Daniel Jones, what happened last year with that offense, and how things have just fallen apart there, yeah, it's tough to be able to keep your job, and it's tough for anybody to sit back here and to be on your side here. So, yeah, the pressure was already on him. Man, they dialed that up even more after that loss to Washington on Sunday.
Yeah, I heard from Patricia Traynor last week, and it was so emotional. So I didn't want to double back and pick on and let her show her misery again. So we're just going to look at the other side, man. Listen to my man, David Harrison, who happens to be our Wednesday expert here on Locked On NFL, and what he had to say about the victory.
Same rivalry with some new members and a new result for the Washington Commanders. This is David Harrison of the Locked On Commanders podcast. And following a 21-18 win over the New York Giants, the Washington Commanders not only secured their first win of the season, their first win under head coach Dan Quinn, but also their first win in their last 5 tries against the New York Giants. Since January of 2022, the Washington Commanders had not won a game against the Giants, but that all changed thanks to Coach Quinn and also some new faces, Jaden Daniels, wide receiver Noah Brown on the game-winning drive, and of course, kicker Austin Seibert making 7 of 7 field goal attempts for a new franchise record. But it wasn't all just the new guys. Running back Brian Robinson, who we have all known since his rookie year could do more for this Washington Commanders offense, finally getting the chance and turning in a career day in the process. For more on this and everything Washington Commanders, check out the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
When you start being somebody's get right, their act right, their elixir, their antibiotic, their vaccine, you got problems. And Washington got fixed yesterday and played the New York Giants. And as much as I like Brian Daboll, I just think that this is just a bad situation for him to be in, especially in the NFC East. Speaking of the NFC East, game tonight, the misery of the Giants, the absolute laughable circumstances, and not only that the Cowboys lost, but how they lost. Washington ain't no serious threat. The Eagles might run away from this. I was hoping that Atlanta could bow up a little bit, sort of like the Saints did, and give them a little bit of a shot. But I don't think Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons feels like they have a chance. Check this out.
But we'll start off talking about, to me, what the story of this game is, which is you're going to need the Falcons coaches to step up. And will they step up, right, this week? That's, to me, going to be the best way that the Falcons are going to be able to beat this Eagles team, because I don't think this Eagles team is a team that they match up well. This is why throughout the entire summer since the schedule came out, and it didn't matter whether the Falcons were playing week 2 or week 12. Like, I wouldn't have predicted this game to be a win for the Falcons just because I don't think they match up well with the Eagles. That's why they have consistently struggled against the Eagles over the last 15 or so years. And, a big reason for that is because the strength of the Eagles has been, during that period of time, consistently their trench play. And that's been a consistent weakness for the Falcons. And while I think their trench play has gotten better in recent years, it's still not quite to the level where I feel confident that they'll be able to control the line of scrimmage in a way that they need to.
So Freeman basically touched on a lot of things we've touched on today for this Monday night matchup. The bottom line is there were games played by teams yesterday that I didn't think the Raiders could go into Baltimore. I didn't think the Saints could go into Dallas. And then I didn't think without Jordan Love that Green Bay could establish enough physicality with everybody knowing they couldn't really throw the ball a lot to win against the Colts, but they did. Now, Freeman just brought up the fact that their line of scrimmage isn't good and they don't match up good with them. Could they possibly figure it out and find a way to win this game? I don't think so, but you got to give them a shot because of what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it's any given Sunday, I suppose, any given Monday with Monday Night Football at this game. I like one of the things he put out there on his bullet points for the folks who can't watch this on YouTube. He said, run more play action. They were rarely under center in week 1, and Kirk Cousins is coming off of an Achilles injury. And this is a guy who throughout his career, whether it's been in Washington or it was the last couple of seasons in Minnesota, has traditionally been under center, loves to be there, play action and all of that. And the fact they didn't have him in that offense last week, knowing it's kind of the similar scheme he's run before, that tells me he can't move. And he's on one leg. And that's going to limit this offense's ability to be able to do something that Kirk Cousins was brought in to do, and he's really done well in his career. I have a hard time seeing him able to win this game tonight. And then even moving forward in that division, like they're going to be in the cellar of Carolina at 0-2. Like the Panthers, obviously, they're headed towards the number 1 pick based on what we've seen the first 2 weeks. But I think Baker, he's picking up where he left off, maybe even looking better than he looked last season, winning in Detroit on Sunday on the road. And then what the Saints did, what we talked about earlier, it could get late early for the Falcons. I already gave out the numbers about teams that start 0-2. Cincinnati in 2022 made it. And then last year, Houston. Is Kirk Cousins going to go out there and start playing like Joe Burrow? Is he going to have a season like CJ Stroud had last year? Like, I think those are two guys who are better quarterbacks. I know it's still early for CJ, but man, that's not a great start if they lose this game for Raheem Morris and that regime down there in Atlanta with Kirk Cousins.
I got to write something down. I've been cutting hair. I cut hair for 34 years. I ain't never heard nobody say it's going to get late early. I love that because that sounds about right, even though I don't understand it, but it just sounds like something I need to be saying. It's going to get late early. Leave it up to Julia Council, who's here every Monday, to teach an old dog new tricks. All right, man, there you go. Locked On NFL. Make sure you check the Monday night game out. Tyler Rowland will have all of that for you early in the morning. He's going to obviously have the recaps, and we'll look at some of the upsets and some of the storylines that are developing. There's something brewing down here in Jacksonville, too. I'm telling you, man, I know what it looks like when coaches start, when you don't have any answers and they're standing up. Trevor said we sucked. I hope nothing happens, but I kind of hope it does so we can sit here and gossip about that tomorrow here in the barbershop. You guys make sure you make Locked On NFL your first, sometimes your second listen. If you listen to your local show first, listen to us right after that. Tyler Rowland, the Madman, in the morning with a double shot of espresso, and then me here in the barbershop right in the middle of the day. You guys take care of each other, and we'll be back for another episode of Locked On NFL.